This video is a little bit of reassurance for you if you're thinking of moving to Italy and you're a bit like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of things I'm going to need to change about my life. In this video, I'm going to share with you some of the things that I have changed from my British life to the now Italian life that I lead. And I'm talking about things like fashion, television shows, food, just to show you how possible it can be to embrace change in your new life here in Italy, and also how actually sometimes the equivalents you find here may even be better than the original. So let's begin with the first category, and that is fashion. This is an area where I've changed in a couple of different ways. I have changed my fashion sense, absolutely. 2 years ago, I bought my very first pair of Birkenstocks. Trust me when I tell you, these were shoes that would never ever have touched my feet in the UK. I was not a fan of Birkenstocks in the past, but living in a part of Italy where a lot of people tend to wear them in the summer months, I started to really appreciate them more, and now I own a pair too, and I can promise you they are just as comfortable as everybody tells you that they are. The second type of shoe that I'm now interested in, funny enough, are Dr. Martens. Now, Dr. Martens, a lot of people tend to wear here in the winter season. It's quite a bit of a fashionable piece, but it was something again that I just wasn't interested in the UK. Like, I've had different fashion senses in the UK. Like, I was very much into my vintage scene at one point, but I just never really liked Dr. Martens. So this is another way that my fashion sense is evolving the longer I spend here in Italy, and I get to see how people here dress and the kind of key pieces that they put together to accessorize an outfit. Now, it's not just my taste that has evolved, but it is also the way that I shop. I am so much more sustainable now living here in Italy compared to when I was in the UK. Living in the UK, I used to buy a lot of fast fashion. Like, Primark was my second best friend. And, you know, I used to go to Primark every couple of weeks, once a month, and my wardrobe was full of clothes, but not necessarily the best quality ones. And something that has changed for me living here, and partly it's through necessity because I'm a tall woman, and so it's not always easy to find clothes here that fit. Thankfully, I'm starting to find more online shops that are stocking taller ranges, but for me to go into a normal shop here and pick something up that fits me, it's a lot more difficult. So there's that to consider, but also partly because I realise I have a lot of clothes, and something is shifting within me where I don't want to have lots of clothes. I want to have like a capsule wardrobe and actually just have a series of clothes that I rotate between that are good quality clothes. And so it has inspired me this weekend to do a bit of a Marie Kondo on my wardrobe and actually get rid of a lot of clothes that I've held on to for the entire time that I've lived in Italy and have hardly ever, if at all, worn. So it's really interesting that I can see how my approach to shopping has changed. Now I don't want lots of clothes in my wardrobe. I want key pieces that I can rotate between, mix and match, create different outfits, but actually wear everything that I own and not just keep things taking up space. So that is something else that has absolutely changed for me. Like, I don't care as much about the trends and the fashion sense. I've always hated looking like a clone. I do find that there are a lot of people here who look like carbon copies of one another, you know, and whenever there is a latest fashion trend, everybody here seems to own a piece of it, and people run around in the same types of boots and the same coloured jackets, and I don't know, I'm not a big fan of that. I prefer to wear something that I know I'm not going to bump into somebody else tomorrow who's wearing the same thing, you know? But that's how it can be here. So I'm not so much into trends anymore, like perhaps I once was in the UK, but I'm definitely more into gaining good quality pieces, because there is that expression, isn't there? Like, you buy cheap, you buy twice. Very true. Some items from Primark that I still have now, like maybe 6 or 7 years later, like, it's insane. They were good items, but other items after one season, they're ready for the dustbin, or the recycle bin, I should say, because they are just no longer fit for wear. And so it's this, isn't it? So my approach to fashion has completely changed. I live in arguably one of the most stylish countries in the world, and yet I now have a much more fluid approach to what fashion is and kind of how unique it can be to each person and how quality triumphs above everything else. Second category is TV shows. Now, moving to Italy, this is something that I did miss at the very, very beginning. I had certain TV shows that I absolutely loved in the UK, namely Dragon's Den, The Apprentice, X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, Hotel Inspector, I used to watch that as well. And so coming here, it took me a while to find equivalent shows, but they do exist. Yes, they're in Italian, but it's good practice for your learning. So you can find X Factor Italia here, Italia's Got Talent. You can find MasterChef as well. You can even find 4 restaurants and 4 hotels. They are 2 fantastic shows. And so this is proof of how you can change your viewing habits and find other shows that work for you, just the Italian version. Now, when it comes to particular shows like Dragon's Den, for example, I haven't yet found something similar here in Italy like that, but I can watch episodes via YouTube. So there are kind of workarounds if there is a particular show that you cannot find the equivalent of here in Italy, but I really don't think you should let that be a big issue. There are workarounds. There is Netflix, after all, which is universal, although there may be some regional differences for some of the shows. You can find a way to still watch the types of shows that you like to watch. But I have to be honest, my viewing habits have totally changed. Like, I've swapped television now for YouTube. I don't really watch TV that much. Like now and then I might watch a show if it's on in the background, but I don't like religiously turn on the television and find the program that I like. It's more of a background partner for me. It's not something that I am literally consumed by and absorbed by, and that's a huge change for me. Like, I prefer YouTube now because with YouTube I can watch the content that I love. I can follow the people that I enjoy watching videos from, and it's just a platform that I much prefer to television now. And you can access YouTube on TV now, so you even still have the same experience as if you were watching a TV network. So yeah, it's really interesting how my viewing habits have changed. I'm definitely not as big a TV viewer as I once was in the UK. Okay, let's talk about food. Now, this is one area where I've made a few key swaps since I moved to Italy. So I used to love extra mature cheddar cheese, like literally my most favourite thing in the UK. But they don't do cheddar cheese here in Italy, and if they do, it's like the yellow cheddar, and it's usually based on American style cheddar, unless you happen to find British Week at Lidl, where they do sometimes do the mature cheddar cheese. So I found an Italian equivalent, Parmigiano Reggiano, and it is a super strong cheese. It's beautiful, it's often grated and put over pasta dishes, but it is absolutely lovely as well, just chopped up into pieces and eaten in this way. So that is my swap that I've made for the cheese. When it comes to drinking tea, well, I've swapped it mainly for coffee, although I am still able to drink tea here in the winter when it's colder. In fact, I usually bring the tea back over from the UK once I go, so I have some lovely loose leaf tea to drink this winter from Fortnum & Mason. But that aside, if I don't manage to go back to the UK and bring some tea back with me, I will drink like Twinings or something similar here in Italy. I'm a bit of a tea snob. There are some Italian branded teas and things here, but they're not the same. In fact, watch this video up here if you're interested to know more about my take on Italian tea, because I did a bit of a tea test in that video. I've also swapped eggs for breakfast for a croissant and coffee. This is a huge change. Like, I used to have at least once a week a cooked breakfast, or at least eggs and toast if it wasn't the full fry up. I used to also have cereal with milk, but I don't eat any of that anymore. My breakfast every day consists of either a croissant, a plum cake, or maybe a yogurt, or something similar like this with a coffee. That is my breakfast every day now, and I don't miss not having eggs. I love eggs. I could eat them at any time of the day, but they are not a traditional breakfast staple here in Italy. And so I've embraced that change. And now I'll just normally have eggs for lunch or maybe for dinner. So it's interesting. It's interesting how you can adapt those parts of your diet to kind of meet the life that you're living now here in Italy. I've also swapped jars of processed sauce for fresh ingredients. This is a huge swap, and it's probably one of the most significant changes that I've made, is that I definitely eat far less processed food now compared to the past. My diet in the UK, you all know this now, I know you're regulars of my channel, was terrible. You know I talk about this a lot, but now I'm very much more focused on fresh ingredients and will tend to use that more than a jar of processed sauce. It's very rare that I will buy a jar of processed sauce from the supermarket now, and if I do, it's only because I'm really short on time, but even then it will be mixed in with some other fresh ingredients so that it isn't just the processed manufactured taste, but that is on a very rare occasion. Predominantly my food is with fresh ingredients now. Also swapped TV dinners for eating at the table. Now this sounds ridiculous, but like I remember having like takeout pizza, watching TV from the sofa, or like having my food on a tray or on my lap on a cushion, eating and watching my favourite show. Like that's how I used to live at times, not all the time, but fairly regularly. And it was just a really unhealthy way to eat because I wasn't appreciating what I was eating. I was more focused on what I was watching. So that's a big change now. Lunch times, dinner times, they are moments when everything stops. In fact, it's almost frowned upon if people are waiting for you at the table because you're doing something else. Like it's that time is the time to eat. And I'm definitely very grateful that I've made that change. I've also swapped milk for, well, nothing. I no longer drink milk here in Italy. It has been 6 years since I've had a glass of milk. Now, I might have a splash of milk in a cup of tea or something like this, but I do not drink milk on its own anymore, and I haven't drank it for like 6 years. There's just something about the milk here that tastes different. I know that you can get fresh milk. I know it just isn't just the UHT type, but there is something about the taste that is different. And for me, I can't get used to it. And so I don't drink the milk here anymore. And I don't really miss it. I get like my dairy from other food groups, but it's something that, I grew up all my life having a glass of milk, like at some point in the day. And I kind of credit that for having very good teeth. But now, no, like I just cannot find something of equivalence in terms of the taste for me to really enjoy milk here. So I just choose not to drink it at all. I also find like my mindset has changed as well, like drastically. I definitely cared a lot more about what people thought of me when I lived in the UK. Sometimes I would hold myself back. I wouldn't put myself out there. I would be wanting to fit in. And, when I first moved to Italy, I retained that kind of character. I wanted to fit in. I worried what people thought about me. But the longer I've lived here and the more I've really kind of stepped into this experience, and I've realised just how bloody incredible it is to say that I've moved to Italy, I no longer care as much what people think. I do have moments, like, it's not easy if you've been that way all your life to suddenly be somebody who's like, no, I don't care. But they don't happen as often, and it doesn't affect me as much as it used to in the past. I kind of feel observing people here has become like second nature to me because I don't always understand everything that's going on around me. I read people, and it's through those observations that I realise that everybody is just so fickle and everybody is so interested in themselves at the end of the day that it really doesn't matter what they think about you. Like, you lead your life. It doesn't matter if people think you're crazy for moving to Italy. Trust me, that will happen. I remember when I moved here 6 years ago, people in the supermarket would be like, but you've come from London. We want to go to London. Like they thought it was absurd that I would move to this tiny city in the south of Italy, Salerno, from London. And they just couldn't, wrap their head around it. But I just think, you know what, it's my life and you lead your life exactly the way that you want. I think, if we walk around every single day preoccupied with what other people are thinking about us, we stop living and we stop experiencing the things that we are meant to experience. And, this is something that I have to continuously tell myself because, as I've said, it can still happen sometimes, but I'm starting to realise that people are so fickle. If you base your experiences on another person, like you may not even be friends with that person this time next year. You may not even have the same kind of relationship anymore. And then what have you done with your life? You've just been keeping it on hold because you want to still fit in or be respected by somebody. It really doesn't matter. And I think that is a really, really important thing. And I was listening to an amazing podcast episode with Brené Brown a couple of days ago. And in this podcast episode, she was saying as well, like, why create something that you are then afraid to tell the world about? And it took me back to the first book that I wrote, Wake Up to Your Worth. So I wrote that book in 2020, so in the midst of the pandemic year. And I remember I wrote that book and I self-published it, and then I didn't know how to speak about it. I suddenly felt this wave of shame because I was quite vulnerable in this book about some experiences that I'd had, and I didn't talk about it. And you know, this time round with my second book, I'm less shy and I'm talking about it from the rooftops. Oh, by the way, did you not know I've published a book, Lessons from the Boot? I'll link to it up here. There you go. But it's really interesting because this all ties into like being worried about what people think about you. And 2020, what I'd been here like a year and a half, 2 years maybe at that point. And you know, I was still navigating how I was feeling at that point. It was the pandemic. We weren't really living normal lives. So I hadn't really progressed as much as I have now. But this is something else that I've radically changed. And I have to be honest, it is for the better. I hope this video has given you a little bit of an insight into some of the changes that I personally have made and that you too can make in your life. I don't think you should move here and try to keep your life exactly the same 100%. There are definitely going to be things that alter and shift. And it's through that adjustment that I feel that you also really get to appreciate more where you live now and find something better or do something differently that fits in with the new life that you are creating here in South Italy. I will see you in the next video.